Planned Parenthood of Greater New York is removing the name of Margaret Sanger, a founder of the national organization, from its Manhattan clinic. The abortion provider says it made the decision because of Sanger's, quote, harmful connections to the eugenics movement. Pro-lifers are responding. In a statement, Susan B. Anthony List says, quote, the next step for Planned Parenthood is recognizing that Margaret Sanger's racist legacy continues today as abortion continues to disproportionately impact minority communities, especially the Black community. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about this is Dr. Angela Franks, author of the book Margaret Sanger's Eugenics Legacy and professor of theology at St. John's Seminary in Boston. Dr. Franks, welcome to the show. So glad to have you. Let's start right there with the legacy of Margaret Sanger. For people not familiar with the term eugenics, what exactly is it?
The eugenics movement divided people up into either the so-called fit or unfit based on their genetic health and capability. And Sanger completely bought into that movement. It really had its heyday between the 19-teens and really up through World War II. And she was an active part of that movement.
What are some of the views that Sanger espoused when it came to race?
Yeah, with race, it's a little more complicated. Not all eugenicists were racist, and it's really, we don't have a lot of, I think, absolutely clear evidence. Some people think she definitely was a racist. I'm inclined to think she probably wasn't, but it's very clear that she was a eugenicist. And so that means that she considered as unfit people who were poor, people who had physical disabilities or mental or cognitive disabilities, and she considered those people to be, she said at one point, they're like weeds that they shouldn't reproduce. And she considered her work in promoting birth control to be part of promoting a eugenic vision.
I know the board chair of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York said in a statement that removing Sanger's name actually acknowledges, quote, Planned Parenthood's contributions to historical reproductive harm within communities of color, end quote. What do you know about Planned Parenthood's history in that respect and its impact today on communities of color, especially the African-American community?
Yeah, one of the things Planned Parenthood said today is that this is long overdue, and that I think maybe is the only thing that I've ever agreed with Planned Parenthood about on anything. This is long overdue because Sanger wove into the fabric of Planned Parenthood this eugenic idea that we can just decide that some people should not have children for their benefit and for the benefit of society, and that somehow that's something we get to decide. And the way this cashes out concretely with Planned Parenthood is that you see that they have more clinics in poorer neighborhoods and economically disadvantaged areas. They've said in publications in the past that their target population are people who are impoverished, and that also includes obviously racial minorities. They are much more present in minority neighborhoods than they are in white neighborhoods. And so I think we see concretely how this eugenic worldview of Sanger's that she wove into the fabric of Planned Parenthood, how that cashes out today.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your perspective with us. We really appreciate it. Dr. Angela Franks, thank you again.
Thank you.
Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger is known for her advocating in favor of eugenics as a form of population control. Lauren Ashburn sat down with one expert for a closer look at the link between eugenics and Planned Parenthood.
Joining us now is Angela Franks, author of Margaret Sanger's Eugenics Legacy, the Control of Female Fertility. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
Describe eugenics to us.
Eugenics is the belief system that a person's worth is measured by whether or not they're eugenically fit or unfit. And so eugenicists believe that there was a whole group of people whom they labeled the unfit, whose value was really less than people whom they thought were genetically superior.
So, for example, World War II, when the Nazis used eugenics, they were trying to create a superior race, wiping out thousands of Jews, right?
Exactly.
So Margaret Sanger then used the eugenics movement to establish Planned Parenthood, which is, I think, what your book is about here. And how did she do that? How did she mold the narrative of eugenics to make it appealing to the entire population?
Yeah. So in the 19-teens and 20s and 30s, eugenics was a very popular idea among people who are educated and elite. And so Sanger took this idea that some people were fit and some people weren't. And she connected it to population control with the slogan, quality, not quantity. And so her idea was that really this was going to save, the human race, that we were going to breed people who are of a higher, quote unquote, quality, instead of just having lots of people.
So Planned Parenthood uses eugenics in what way?
It's very clear in the early documents of Planned Parenthood that they were committed to eugenics. Now, after World War II, eugenics really lost a lot of popular support because people saw how murderous it could become. So after World War II, eugenics goes underground, and it really becomes much more closely fused into population control. So I say population control is eugenics with a passport.
So I interviewed Archbishop Charles Chaput, and in his new book, he says this about eugenics: the quest through genetics and technology for a new kind of humanity that transcends the jail cell of the purely human brain and flesh is a new research frontier. Why has it become so commonplace now? Is it because of the research?
Yeah, that's really caused a resurgence of eugenics as the genetic research became more and more specialized and more accurate. I mean, really, eugenics in the 1920s was wildly inaccurate. But today we know a lot more about the human genome. And so the idea is now we're going to manipulate it and control it and produce superior people.
And very quickly, we just have a few seconds. What is going to happen with the eugenics movement moving forward?
Well, I think what's going to happen is that people have to resist it. And that's, the technology is going to be there.
All right. Angela Franks, author and director of theology at St. John's Seminary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Planned Parenthood is publicly commemorating Black History Month while turning a blind eye to what the organization's very founder remarked about race. That's this week's Speak Out segment. In a series of recent tweets, Planned Parenthood President Dr. Lena Wen praised Black employees and supporters of Planned Parenthood, including one of her predecessors, the organization's former president, Faye Waddleton. But Wen's posts overlooked Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger's writings on race. In her autobiography, Sanger wrote that she spoke at a 1926 Ku Klux Klan rally. She characterized her lecture there as a success, writing, quote, "I believed I had accomplished my purpose," and that, quote, "a dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were proffered." In a 1939 letter to Dr. Clarence Gamble, Sanger wrote that to expand her efforts, colored ministers should be hired to help them make their case. Here are her words. Listen to this. "The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members." This disdain for African Americans is not just a stain in the organization's past. It is ongoing in their work today. Black babies are aborted at a disproportionate rate in the U.S. population. According to the Centers for Disease Control, abortion rates in 2008 for non-Hispanic Black and Hispanic teenagers were 2 to 3 times higher than the rates for non-Hispanic white teenagers. The fact Planned Parenthood claims to celebrate Black History Month while not acknowledging these facts speaks to its hypocrisy and lies. Do not trust Planned Parenthood and do not fall for their propaganda, not during Black History Month or for any month for that matter.